The strategic Bitcoin reserve in the US is definitely coming. It's going to be intense. Donald Trump will sign an executive order on the first day. That's what Bitcoin analyst Fred Krueger is saying now. And he also explains exactly why he's so sure about this. Let's take a look at what's behind this. We also have new insights. Additionally, there are brutal statements from Bitwise CIO Matt Hougan, who says that Bitcoin can still rise to $500,000 this year. We have Brian Armstrong, who is also very, very confident that 2025 is going to be a massive year. He recently met with Donald Trump, too. That 2025 is going to be a massive year. He recently met with Donald Trump. And we also have Michael Saylor, who just met with a leading pro-Bitcoin politician in France. First, let's take a look here in the US because Fred Krueger is very, very confident about this and says that a strategic Bitcoin reserve will be announced this Monday. So it will be announced in just about a day. And in the meantime, all the exchanges are closed. That means the thread file folks can't get into Bitcoin anymore. So if you want to front run the event here, there's only the option, for example, to buy spot Bitcoin like through 21 Bitcoin or other exchanges. I'll also put a link down below to 21 Bitcoin, where you can easily and safely buy Bitcoin. Here, you can still get up to 20% off the fees with the code Bitcoin. And here you can still front run the thread file folks, Wall Street, and so on. The doors are now closed for them. And now Fred Krueger is coming in with his massive prediction. And he says here, on the first day, the strategic Bitcoin reserve will be announced. And he clearly explains that now. He says that a lot of executive orders will be announced on Monday. That's a given. So that's totally normal. This here, which always involves a lot of executive orders. Wow, it's so hot here. Still 35 degrees. That's so crazy. I had 142 degrees in Paraguay today. That's really intense. And now he actually says that among all the executive orders, the Bitcoin executive order will also be signed. And Cynthia Lummis even made a post yesterday that they're making the final preparations here to basically finalize the legislation for the Bitcoin reserve strategy. So things are basically set, all ready to go. Donald Trump just needs to put his signature on it. He's going to do some other things too, probably something about migration. And what do I know? What else is there? Then the second point that Fred Krueger is making. If there isn't an executive order for the strategic Bitcoin reserve among all these big announcements, many of Trump's supporters will be very upset, right? So he clearly says here that in the end, there are so many executive orders. And if the Bitcoin executive order isn't included, then a lot of people are going to be really disappointed, right? Then there will also be a sell-off event, and that's why Monday is going to be crazy, no matter what. So if the strategic Bitcoin reserve comes, then it's going to be wild. It's going to go massively up, wild, because then maybe the Bitcoin price will rise, because the excitement is building, because 2025 is probably going to be even more bullish. And if the strategic Bitcoin reserve doesn't happen, then what Fred Krueger is saying here will take place. Then a whole lot of people are going to be disappointed. But he also says here in the third point that he doesn't want to. That right from the start, a whole lot of people are going to see him as a loser, let's say. And he doesn't want to disappoint everyone right from the start. And that's why he has no other choice here, like to roll out the strategic Bitcoin reserve on the first day. And that's basically it here. Fred Krueger's take. Like I said, this is a possible scenario. I'm not saying it's going to be 100% accurate, but I'm saying that the probability is definitely there, and it sounds pretty convincing too. What Fred Krueger has to say here, but I still wouldn't take all my money and go all in on Bitcoin. Only if you're speculating on the event here. Like this, is it also about keeping it in front of you? We also saw, like the whole shitcoin story that Donald Trump put out there. With the meme coins, he may not focus on Bitcoin. I found an interesting take on Bitcoin, but maybe even on Bitcoin here. What I also found to be an interesting take here, because Donald Trump has now made such massive gains here with the meme coin, with the Trump coin, that now even Donald Trump himself has an incentive here, the Bitcoin, or to loosen and simply improve crypto taxation here in the U.S. That means Donald Trump is now in our boat because the whole crypto taxation is affecting them. Yeah, whether it's a meme coin or a Bitcoin coin or something like that, it affects everyone equally. So when I say US, I don't mean you or me or anything like that, because we're not in the US, or at least most of the viewers aren't in the U.S. But the US is the largest capital market. And if the Bitcoin regulation gets better here, if the taxation goes down, the taxes go down, then of course the Bitcoin price and the whole Bitcoin market benefit from this. And you benefit from it indirectly as well. And that's the exciting takeaway, that Donald Trump now has so many gains, that he even has the incentive here to lower the taxes here. Jameson Lobb also had an interesting approach. Because Jameson Lobb, first of all, for those who don't know him, he's basically a Bitcoin developer, a Bitcoin cyberpunk. And some even consider him to be Satoshi Nakamoto, although that's probably a huge stretch. He's probably definitely not Satoshi Nakamoto. But now there's the consideration. What is Donald Trump doing with all those profits? Many people have criticized the fact that the meme coin here, Donald Trump's shitcoin, has basically 80% pre-mine, and the whole foundation owns it. And now Jameson Lobb says, my advice to the Trump coin team would be to keep everything. So keeping all those profits here and then implementing Ripple's treasury strategy. So the slow, dumping over many years. Dump for Bitcoin and use it to build the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So that basically the 80% will be dumped into the market over a longer period from the development team, because the Trump coins are being sold, so that a Bitcoin is systematically swapped out and you can build a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the Trump family. That's definitely something you guys enjoy. Also meant, I'm not really sure if you can just dump all 80% like that. There are also a few people now who have said, okay, there's some kind of mechanism, that it doesn't really work, that he can't just dump everything here and so on. But that would definitely be one option, that Donald Trump is over. Basically, the shitcoin phase is now moving even more towards Bitcoin. David Bailey also posted something about this again. He said it's cool that Donald Trump has now arrived in the shitcoin world. Now we just need to get him over to Bitcoin. He said it's cool that Donald Trump has now arrived in the shitcoin world. Now we just need to get him over to Bitcoin. People like Michael Saylor are also important to get him into Bitcoin, you know. And then sooner or later, he'll also come to Bitcoin through his shitcoin phase. And what does he do with his capital? With his Trump coins, it's probably very, very likely. Then sooner or later, he'll convert that into Bitcoin. Because even Donald Trump needs to understand that sooner or later, the Trump coin is going to crash. There are no meme coins that somehow maintain their value consistently for 20 or 30 years. Sooner or later, the capital has to be shifted into Bitcoin. And that's basically the essence of what Jameson Lobb is trying to say. That sooner or later, all of Donald Trump's gains could flow into Bitcoin. And it's actually not that unlikely. And now we had a very interesting statement from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong about the development of Bitcoin in the U.S. And he was also invited to the crypto ball with Donald Trump, Michael Saylor, and many others.
Listen, to what? What is it that you see perhaps exactly?
To say, here, crypto Congress ever, is that I think we finally have so he says, issues that, frankly, under Gary Gensler, we just, God, clearly a long time.
So it's being said, it's quite clear that the open issues that were never clarified here under the Biden administration, under Gary Gensler, will be addressed now under Donald Trump. And that could probably happen pretty quickly. That these will now be clarified under Donald Trump. And that could probably happen pretty quickly. Here, various executive orders are being discussed, including those related to regulators, about the CP 121 rule, and much more is expected here. That it might actually work here on the first day. Because maybe not just one Bitcoin executive order will go through. Maybe several Bitcoin executive orders will actually go through. There was also that leak where someone said that he apparently knows something here, that an executive order will be signed on the first day. Then Jack Mellers joined in. Now Fred Krueger is joining in. That means more and more people are clearly positioning themselves for a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Some say, hold on, only regulatory executive orders are coming. And others say, hold on, a major executive order is coming. That Donald Trump will also buy Bitcoin with the U.S. And then there was actually a meeting here between Michael Saylor and Sarah Nafo. Here's a politician from France who already gave a massive speech in the EU Parliament, where she really advocated for Bitcoin, where she clearly laid it all out. But CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, are an absolute disaster here, which is why we don't need a digital euro. And how the ECB is systematically robbing us and basically restricting our freedom more and more. Here, it has strongly advocated for Bitcoin in the European Parliament. And now she's also in contact with Michael Saylor. And it will probably also establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve here in France under certain circumstances. Let's say proposing. I mean, this is what I'm trying to get across here. That's not a given, that it's coming, but I can definitely imagine that she discussed ideas like a strategic Bitcoin reserve with Michael Saylor. Whether this will happen in France or not, I don't know. On the other hand, you have to say, she doesn't really have that much say. At least not in the way I briefly researched it. I don't think she could completely change the Bitcoin policy in France. But at least these are the first signs that things are improving even in socialist states like France. And now we have this massive statement from Bitwise CIO Matt Hougan, who is really bullish on Bitcoin. and actually predicts a Bitcoin price of $500,000 by 2025, under certain conditions.
12 months from now, Matt, it's December 2025. We're talking here. Where's Bitcoin, Matt? What do you expect?
It's great to be here. We're having the same conversation that Bitcoin had an incredible run. We expect Bitcoin to be high, over $200,000 next year. There are just 3 unforgettable sources of demand that move the market. There are ETFs that weigh Bitcoin. There are public companies like MicroStrategy that are weighing Bitcoin. And now we're talking about governments that weigh Bitcoin. At the end of the day, it all comes down to supply and demand. There are too many demands, not enough supply. And I think the price will be higher in 2025.
So what he presented here was just his base case. He'll also touch on the 500,000 later on. US dollar price and what it takes for that. So in the worst case scenario, if no strategic Bitcoin reserve comes in here, if Bitcoin just does its thing, then we're looking at 200,000 by the end of the year, US dollars. And I mean, that's already a pretty bullish forecast here. And he says it pretty simply in the end. There are 3 main drivers, and those are the Bitcoin ETFs. They will definitely bring massive inflows into Bitcoin. I also expect that the Bitcoin ETFs will actually see inflows. They will increase again compared to 2024, so that in 2025, more inflows will come in here, as what flowed into Bitcoin in 2024. Then he says that more public companies will be coming in. We're currently seeing almost an exponential increase, that the number of public companies is really expanding every month. In the past, we might have had 1 company every month, and then maybe at some point there would be 2 or 3 companies each month. Now we're seeing sometimes 10, 20 new companies coming in, 2 or 3 companies. Now we're seeing sometimes 10, 20 new companies coming in. Introduce a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Then he basically says the third point, I wrote it down. That's exactly what states will basically do by Bitcoin. That's exactly what the US is going to do here. But in that scenario, it only assumes that states will open up a bit for Bitcoin. For example, better regulation and stuff like that. That states will basically open up a bit for Bitcoin. For example, better regulation and stuff like that. In this case, it doesn't assume that yet, at the 200,000 mark. Bitcoin price that the US is buying Bitcoin. And then it all comes down to this. Hey, everything depends on supply and demand. The demand is massively higher than the supply. That means Bitcoin has to perform massively in 2025. And then later in the interview, we don't need to listen to that again. In the whole segment, I'll just tell you later in the interview, he goes into it and says, but hey, if a strategic Bitcoin reserve comes in, then the Bitcoin price could shoot up to 500,000. Catapult the US dollar upwards. Then there will be the absolute Godzilla candle. He's very clear about that. And you also need to know this isn't some internet nonsense or anything like that, but it's an official asset manager who manages, I don't know, billions in assets or something like that. He can't just call for the Godzilla candle here if he doesn't really see a real chance there. He says that the chance for a strategic Bitcoin reserve is currently around 50%. So others are being a lot more bullish. This one is almost still on the bearish side. And now I'm actually going to tell you a cool story. So I was out and about here in Paraguay today, and I found myself a spot to go swimming here. And I was actually at a river now. I was at a lake today. And I kept looking, okay, where can I go swimming here? And I was always kind of startled because there were always some signs up. No swimming allowed, you can't swim, blah, blah, blah. I never saw any people who were swimming. And then there was the river and there was basically a border. And on the other side of the river, you could already see Argentina. I was already thinking about it. Come on, now you just swim over real quick and stuff. So I asked some people, right? You can get in the water here. There were also signs up, no swimming and all that, but I usually don't care about that. If there's a sign up, I thought, okay, let's jump in anyway. Then they said, no, definitely don't go in here. And the crazy thing is, here in Paraguay, no matter where you want to get in the water, it either has crocodiles in the water, it has piranhas in the water, and then there are currents in the water. So basically, you can't really get in the water anywhere at 41 degrees. You can only get in the pool, which is kind of strange. So I was a bit disappointed. I mean, there's Argentina somehow. 20 meters away from you. You just have to swim across. You can say hello to Mili. And then you can't get in the water because it's all full of piranhas and crocodiles. I'm going to show you the awesome skyline here in Asunción, Paraguay. I'll be back in El Salvador soon. See you later. Peace out.